welcome to RADTV. My name's Noah Detzer. I'm going to be your host for this evening, and we welcome you to another exciting edition of talking about politics, local organizing, and all that kind of stuff. So tonight, we've got a lot on the agenda. We're going to be speaking with several people. First, our former host, Grant Taylor, is going to be speaking a little bit about the Clean Water Bill and some of the work he's done there. We're also going to speak to Kate Canizzo all about the work that she's done in terms of the Smart Justice Vermont campaign, Freedom Series, and a little bit about the RAD's Decarcerate campaign. As always, if you're interested in the discussion that's going on here and you want to chime in, please feel free to call in at 802-862-3966. Once again, that's 802-862-3966. We look forward to hearing from you. At this point, we're going to shift gears a little bit and introduce the first of our guests. Kate is really involved with the Smart Justice Vermont campaign, the Freedom Series, RAD's Decarcerate campaign, as we talked about before. Kate, I want to turn it over to you first to introduce yourself, give a little bit of background about what it is you're doing, and then specifically segue into what issues you wanted to talk about for the viewers.
Sure. My name is Kate Canizzo. I'm the Communications Director at the ACLU of Vermont. We have worked with or have shared common goals with RAD and the Decarcerate campaign for a long time. This January, the ACLU of Vermont launched the Smart Justice Vermont campaign, which is a campaign with the goal of decreasing Vermont's incarceration rate by 50%. And we're going to be doing that through legislative reforms, through advancing racial justice work, and through an initiative holding elected prosecutors accountable, which is something that I hope we'll get to talk about later on. So that's what I'm doing here. Great.
Can you give us a little bit of background about maybe some of the specifics that you've been working on in the last couple of weeks or month or so?
Sure, absolutely. One thing that has been related to the Smart Justice campaign that we've been or that specifically our community organizer, Nico Amador, has been hosting has been a series of webinars and trainings related to topics around mass incarceration. One which recently Rights and Democracy helped us promote on the subject of elected prosecutors. The next one coming up is on June 14th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. and the topic of that is going to be restorative justice, which is we know that many of the people in prison don't belong there, but that our communities need a mechanism to handle situations where people have caused real harm. And restorative justice is a model that has deep roots in Vermont, going back decades, that seeks to help people who have caused harm to show accountability and growth, helps people who have been victims of harm come to the table and be part of the discussion. It's a really fascinating model, and Nico's going to have some experts on with him to talk about it. It's going to be Mel Motel from the Brattleboro Community Justice Center and Heather Hobart from the Lamoille Restorative Center will be there with him on the 14th, and it should just be a great conversation based on how the past couple have gone.
Excellent.
Where was that going to be?
Oh, sorry. It's a webinar, so you can join online or by phone. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to acluvt.org/smartjusticevt. And there in the right in the right bar, you'll see a link where you can register. It's free and open to the public, but that's how you'll get the information, the link to how to join us.
Awesome. So if some of our viewers are interested in checking it out, they just go to that link and sign up there?
Yes, please do. It's again, it's acluvt.org, and if you find your way just to that, our general website, you can probably find it, but more specifically, acluvt.org/smartjusticevt.
Excellent. And if this sounds interesting to you, please feel free to check it out. And if you want to call in and have some questions, once again, that number is 802-862-3966, 802-862-3966. Kate, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Freedom Series, if you could talk a little bit about your work there.
So the Freedom Series is that webinar series. That the most recent one is going to be the one on restorative justice. But we've had a couple of those so far. We've talked about mass incarceration 101, talking about the forces over the past decades that have led to the U.S. becoming the world's jailer, with jailing the highest percentage of our population in the world. We have talked about the Scott administration's proposal to bring a private prison company into Vermont. That was the next discussion that we had. Thankfully, that proposal seems to be going nowhere.
Wow, so that was on the table a little bit?
Well, it was something that the Scott administration introduced, earlier in 2018, related to their proposal to add more than 100 new prison beds to the state, build a new facility that would have, near St. Albans, that would have kind of a multi-purpose. They were calling it a campus, which just sounds like the wrong word to me. But so that was proposed, and it was proposed that a private company, like one of the private prison companies that are, have such a heinous record for human rights and civil rights abuse, would come in and would essentially build it and then lease it back to the state. And the details, thankfully, it received vocal and immediate outcry from people that was not desired and seems to not be advancing at this time, although, as always, Vermonters should pay attention to plans around prisons and incarceration in our state to make sure that such a specter wouldn't rise again. But anyway, so that we had a webinar to discuss that plan, and specifically, some of the many profound problems with the private prison industry. The entire idea of having a corporate entity that just profits on human misery and confinement.
Yeah, it's more about profit than rehabilitation.
So, and then the third one was about elected prosecutors, who we often call the most powerful politicians that you've never heard of, because they have such enormous power over the lives of Vermonters entangled in the criminal justice system.
Given that there's so much work to be done on reforming the criminal justice system, is there anything you can suggest to our viewers about how they can take a more active role in maybe trying to turn things around?
Well, what we would really love for folks to do is to, especially as we're getting into this election season, is that we're really interested in getting more Vermonters familiar with their state's attorney. So in Vermont, elected prosecutors are called state's attorneys. Every county has one. And they're on the ballot this year in 2018. And state's attorneys, you don't necessarily realize it on its face, because you think of the criminal justice system, you think of police and judges and juries. But the reality is, in Vermont, the overwhelming majority, more than 90% of cases, end in plea deals, which are bargains that are established by the state's attorney's office. So in the end, it's the state's attorney who gets to decide if a Vermonter goes to prison and for how long. So they actually have an enormous impact on the incarceration rate in our state. So what we would like is to have Vermonters learn more about their state's attorneys and see where they stand on some really important issues around criminal justice reform. So that's something that we'll be talking about in the coming months.
Awesome, yeah. Well, thank you for that. And then was there anything else you wanted to add just about smart justice before we moved on to our second segment?
I think that we're making some exciting progress. The legislature continues on, but in the regular session, we were pleased to see a bail reform bill pass, which limits the amount of bail for certain low-level misdemeanors to $200, which is part of an important goal of our campaign, which is that no one should be incarcerated in Vermont just because they're poor, just because they can't afford bail. And we also have seen that there's a sentencing commission signed into law, which hopefully will help bring more justice and equity to Vermont's sentencing statewide, as opposed to having different outcomes in different counties. So, we're encouraged by that. And then now we're rolling into elected prosecutors' work. And, thank you for reminding me. I think that I should also mention, while I'm spitting out URLs, that Vermonters that might want to learn more about the role of state's attorneys and elected prosecutors can do so at acluvt.org/prosecutors.
Okay, well
Thank
that
you.
sounds like an awesome resource. Just to recap a little bit, it sounds like the ACLUVT.org website contains a lot of information, not only the information about the prosecutors themselves, but also a little bit of that information about the webinars we talked about earlier. Just as a quick reminder, that next webinar is on June 14th from 6 to 7:30, and it's about restorative justice. So if that's something that might be interesting to you, please check out ACLUVT.org and click around in there, try to find out basically how to sign up. At this point, we're going to move over and talk a little bit to Grant. Grant's been doing some work specifically on tracking a couple of bills, S260, which is the funding the state waterway cleanup, and H576, which is the stormwater management. We're also going to talk a little bit about Governor Scott specifically and his actions, or I guess lack of actions in some cases, about helping our natural resources, and then once again shifting it over to talking about what you may be able to do right there, right now. So Grant, take it away.
Well, very cool. So initially, some things happened a couple years ago around cleaning up our state waterways so that we could mitigate a problem that was literally growing in Lake Champlain, having to do with phosphorus loading on the lake overall. Stagnant waters, a lot of heat, grows this algae, and it's called cyanobacteria, blue-green algae. It's been all over the Great Lakes, all across the country. So Vermont enacted Act 64. It was a Clean Water Act. It was meant to really implement the practices and the efforts that we needed to do throughout the state, through all different industries, to meet the new total maximum daily load, which is TMDL for phosphorus on Lake Champlain. So that was a couple years ago. Act 64 came through. So these bills now are meant to really stimulate the power behind and kind of put our money where our mouth is, or put the motivation and the work where it needs to go, to make Act 64 a reality, to really get some work done around cleaning up our lake, and at least preventing more nutrient loading and more pollution going into the lake, along with other pollutants. So it's recently been actually passed. Both bills were passed. It was H576. That was a stormwater management bill, which brought in some new rules around limits about if you have a certain acreage of impervious surface, the amount of runoff, how the runoff goes, and how you manage that stormwater runoff became smaller. So if you have a 3-acre impervious surface, now you're going to have to follow some of the same rules. So that's good. That got signed. There's some other parts in that bill too, and then the other bill, Act S260. So that got signed, but it was it's supposed to be funding some of this clean waterways funding bill, and it's just the funding mechanisms got removed from it, which I believe is why it got signed. But so that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm seeing all this go together.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, this was a bill about funding the state waterway, and they reduced the funding?
Yes, Act S260.
260, right.
Right, yeah.
That's, not ideal.
It's a little awkward. I'm not sure exactly how, it's still moving forward, or what it means to move forward with, but yeah.
Yeah, it's especially interesting too that, I mean, based on what has and has not passed, just given kind of this veto session, specifically like the $50 minimum wage, paid family leave, I mean, he's just been not shy kind of with that veto pen, and so the end of this session has been particularly interesting. I don't know if either of you wanted to share your thoughts on just kind of the way that this session is wrapping up, how we were supposed to be basically pretty much done, and now we're looking at continuing on well into the summer. If you had any thoughts or ideas about that you wanted to share.
Well, I'll let you go first. I feel like I've been talking for a minute, but
I mean, I think that the majority of the bills that we were tracking in the legislature have been at this point signed or vetoed, and some of them we're celebrating and some of them we're mourning. But we have a lot of hope that, based on the work we've done throughout the session on criminal justice reform, on racial justice, on various other legislation related to open government and transparency, that we have a good foundation to keep building on next session after all of this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still have active measures that are kind of in discussion.
No, I just think it's kind of a signal as to the tricky political atmosphere that the country's in, but also that our state's in. The governor's certainly trying to keep promises, and also feeling pressure from two sides on basically every issue. And yeah, I don't know. It seems typical or kind of expected. I think that this is what came about, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that continues on, especially in light of the fact that we're in an election year. And speaking of that open government and transparency, as you may or may not know if you followed the show for a little while, Rights and Democracy has several different groups, but one of them is the Movement Politics Committee. The Movement Politics Committee is all about trying to empower people in their communities if they feel like they want to actually be a part of the legislative process to go out and run for office. Grant and I are both on the Movement Politics Committee at RAD, and thought we might give a little bit of background there before jumping into to what that might look like this fall for the actual elections. I think the most recent and most apparent demonstration of kind of that Movement Politics Committee group was back a couple of months ago when we were speaking to the different candidates who were lobbying to be either the mayor or several of the city councilors, and then the process of how to enact the Burlington People's Platform, and which of those candidates was most interested in kind of furthering the goals of the People's Platform. As a reminder, if you don't know, we worked to develop that with the people of Burlington, trying to create essentially a document that was reflective of community values and the intentions that as a community we wanted and hope to bring in and try to bring into practice. Grant, I don't know if you wanted to chime in about the process at all, but...
Well, it's been a lot of fun to be a part of. Yeah. That's for sure. It's a lot of responsibility. Learned a lot about the different mechanisms of endorsing candidates and doing, following the process of movement politics, getting the kind of grassroots people to step up and bring those ideas that they've been talking about in their neighborhoods to any seat for office. Of course, we talked about this, our most recent endorsement process, just a few months ago on the show from November. So that was a lot of success there, which we're happy to report.
Yeah. Well, and I think most recently, too, in the March show, we had two of the candidates who had received the endorsement who were on talking a little bit about their plans for the upcoming weeks and months as a part of kind of what they were hoping to accomplish and how we as members of the community could help out. Once again, if you're interested in any of this, if you want to be a part of the process, either check out radvt.org. You can check out RAD's kind of basically everything there is to know about RAD on that website, and also how to get more involved. We're always looking for more people to come. We've got these meetings at least once a month, and the different committees have kind of different meetings in addition to that. If you're interested in chiming in with the discussion, interested in sharing kind of anything that we're talking about here, that number once again is 802-862-3966. I want to turn our attention to the fall specifically. I mean, there's going to be elections obviously on all three levels. We've got the local, state, and the national. Obviously, the national one is a bit up in the air. But in terms of the state, I mean, we've got, I think at this point, 4 elected candidates who have declared their candidacy for the Democratic governor. And then Phil Scott is, I think, planning on running for re-election. If he hasn't formally announced, then but I think he's given no indication otherwise that he won't be seeking that. And so it'll be interesting to see how kind of the movement politics group factors into the endorsement process and then how we see that going forward.
Well, we're going to be working on some candidate forums, right, and bring them together around the state so that people can go and ask questions from them. We'll see pretty soon. I don't know when those are going to get really developed. but it's been really part of what Rights and Democracy has been developed for, and what we've been trying to do for the past year. What we're happy to say is that we have found a lot of people that have become interested and have been talking to people in their communities, and now they are sitting in seats, in school board seats or in city council seats. And then now we have even more people that even people that I met in the same capacity as Noah and I sitting here now, running for Senate, running for other seats in the state. So it's great to see movement politics kind of working. That's what Rights and Democracy says they're going to do, and that's what they tend to deliver on. And it's been a great, like I said before, it's been great being part of the process. The Clean Water Committee, the Energy Democracy Committee, Movement Politics Committee, but all the organizing teams can all definitely use everybody's help and everybody's efforts, and if you've got anything to say, come out and talk to us about it. We love to engage in discourse at all these different events, and it's good, even if you disagree, we can have a discussion about it and see how we go on the other side.
Yeah, I think the important thing is having that dialogue, fostering kind of a communication between, just because given the potential for kind of a toxic atmosphere, it's more important now than ever to be listening to people who may not necessarily share your point of view, but are interested in getting involved and making some real change. Something I wanted to mention too is that RAD is actually going to be putting on an event at the end of June. We're going to be welcoming Nina Turner to Vermont for a series of gubernatorial forums in Rutland and Bennington, and then a community event on the evening of Saturday, June 30th. That's going to be actually right here in Burlington's new North End. So we've got a series of events going on, and June is really when it gets kind of kicked off. So if that's something you might be interested in, please check out radvt.org. RAD also has been recently expanding the push into New Hampshire as well. So we're going to see some movement on the New Hampshire side of things as well. So once again, that's June 30th for the Burlington event. Those other dates, I don't have them right in front of me, but they are on the website. So please feel free to check those out. And the other thing too that I think I didn't mention at the top of the show is that it is May 31st, which means today is the last day to get some of those signatures in if people are going to be running for statewide elected office. So over the course of the next week or so, it's going to be really interesting to see how all of those different races are going to shape up, because I know that the lieutenant governor received a last-minute challenge, and I think that sort of thing is going to be cropping up periodically here. So we'll see how these races kind of continue to change and develop. But if you were interested in getting involved, either with RAD or on a local level with a specific candidate, it's pretty easy to get in touch with them. Most of those candidates are going to have websites, and it's easy to head over there and either donate some money to them, or to work with them, to volunteer, maybe go door to door and have those conversations that we were talking about, making sure that we are engaging with the community and trying to see who the best individual who's running for office is to represent that community and to kind of fully carry the ideals and the hopes of that community to the State House, or really any of the offices. So something to keep in mind as we push forward into the summer here. At this point, I wanted to open it up. I don't know, Kate, if there was anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of your position, and just how kind of the ACLU has been is gearing up for the summer, and what we can look forward to in the next couple of months in terms of, in addition to kind of the webinars that we've been talking about.
I was also interested in kind of how much RAD's decarcerate kind of campaign met up with like the ACLU and your guys' efforts previously, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are some clear, strong, shared goals that we have with the Decarcerate campaign, and I know that RAD has been very active in this space for a long time, and we're excited to be kind of working beside them towards the goal of making sure that there are fewer Vermonters in prison, and so that's what we will continue to be working on over the summer. I think that it is an interesting kind of counterpoint that RAD does, some candidate-focused work, and whereas as we think at the ACLU, we think about it as we're on the not that RAD isn't, but that our focus, since we're a nonpartisan organization that does not endorse candidates, is that we're looking at the voter kind of exclusively, and we're talking about things like, the ACLU in Vermont. I mean, here in Vermont, we are have very good access to the voting booth, but nationwide, certainly the ACLU is working on voting rights and making sure that everybody who is eligible to vote can vote in this summer and this fall. And then we're really looking at making sure that we provide or access to voter education to get people informed and engaged so that they can then in turn vote for their values and hold their candidates accountable. And what we see in Vermont is that there's as evidenced by the Decarcerate campaign and other other organizations working in this space that have this really engaged and passionate folks behind them, that there's a good path forward for all of us to kind of work side by side towards that goal.
Yeah.
So really glad to.
Well, and I think too, I mean, it's really nice to be in a state with a Secretary of State like Jim Condos, who's really prioritized that same-day registration, making sure that the process is as open as it can be. And I mean, again, we're fortunate in a way that a lot of states aren't. I mean, there's just so many rules and restrictions that are deliberately designed to keep people out of the process, and I think now more than ever, it's important to get people involved and engaged. So.
Same-day registration, and Vermont is one of 2 states where incarcerated people can vote. Mm-hmm. And we're, glad to make sure that, the right to vote is what it is, and it's so strongly felt in Vermont.
So take advantage.
Yeah, right.
And pay attention to who's on the ballot for your state's attorney. Your
State's
local
attorney,
state's attorney.
State's attorneys or elected prosecutors.
Is this going to come up in our election process in November for all of us?
There will be primaries in August, and there may be contested primaries for state's attorney in August, and then the general election for state's attorneys will be on election day in November. So your state's attorney will be on the ballot. Some will be running unopposed, which is something that in an ideal world there would be more voices to kind of debating these important issues around criminal justice in Vermont. But still, we think that it's very important for Vermonters to know who their state's attorney is and what sort of decisions that person is making in their name.
Yeah.
So that they can have that dialogue and engagement open, kind of regardless of.
I think what we hope to kind of get people into here is, if you're maybe watching this show and you're hearing about movement politics and you're hearing about how we have a Decarcerate campaign and how the ACLU is kind of working with us to let us know that our state's attorneys are elected officials. If you have something that you feel passionately about incarceration or rules or ethics or anything like that, you've been personally affected and you want to make some change, come talk to us. You can attend some trainings, and maybe we'll talk with the ACLU. We'll get you into some elections. We'll get you elected.
Yeah.
It takes a year, maybe 2, maybe not this summer, but I'm just saying it's how we try to get things going. So if you're passionate about something, do what you can.
And I can personally attest. I mean, I took the training last summer, towards the end of last summer, and it was incredibly eye-opening and really just an excellent use of I think it was about a day, and I learned a lot just about kind of the process and everything in general. So, as somebody who's taken it, I'm happy to vouch for the effectiveness of the program. Yep. That's just about all we have time for today. A couple of things I wanted to mention. First, if either of the things that we've been talking about, either on the RAD side or the ACLU side, sound interesting to you and you want to check them out a little bit more, please check out acluvt.org or radvt.org. There is also a New Hampshire version of RAD too. RAD-NH. Yeah. So anyway, that's good to know. And then a couple of other things that are coming up. On June 14th, 6 to 7:30 is the Restorative Justice webinar we spoke about earlier in the program. To get signed up for that, go to the ACLU website we just spoke about. And finally, on June 30th, in the new North End, we're going to be having a gubernatorial forum as led by Nina Turner and some of our other RAD affiliates. That's going to be more information about that, and then the other gubernatorial forums in Bennington and in Rutland. All of that information is also available on our website. Please check it out. Please stay engaged. And if you want to continue to be a part of a grassroots, people-powered organization where we are committed to creating independent political movement towards long-lasting change, please search up our information and come be a part of the team. We're looking forward to hearing your voice and to seeing what you're interested in. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of the night. And from all of us at RAD and the ACLU, we'll see you next time.